be on those, okay? So let's get to where we ended up. All right, so I revised some of the graphs to better represent, perhaps to your brains, how class is organized. Again, because it's very different than the Eckers, and I wanted to make sure that you get an overall understanding of how the tool itself is organized. Again, you will probably not use the tool yourself, but you will most likely be evaluated on the tool. So I wanted to make that part perfectly clear, is that you will not be using the tool, but you have a very high probability of being evaluated by somebody else. Okay, remember, what is it rating? What is this tool measuring? Interactions. Interactions between you as the teacher and the environment. So when the tool is being used in your classroom, they are rating you and how you interact with the kids, you in your interaction with the material, you and how you set up the environment to support children. Okay? So is it really nice to know, if you're going to be evaluated, is it nice to know what you're going to be evaluated on? Yes, it is. And hopefully if you're a great teacher, it's not going to matter as far as what you're scored on, but it also helps to see these are the types of things that makes for good interactions. Okay? Because that's what the tool tells us. Is the tool research-based? Go like this. Yes. Is it valid? Yes. Is it reliable? Yes. Remember we talked about that extensively. All right. So there's 3 domains that are covered in the class tool. What are the 3 domains? Okay. So those are the 3 domains that are covered in the tools. How many different dimensions are there? There's 10, okay? So as you can tell from here, we're going to look at it, a couple of different graphical representations just in case others work better for your brain. Every domain has associated dimensions, okay? So it's kind of hierarchical. It's like a little pyramid or a little tree, however you want to organize it in your brain. Again, it's a very complex tool, so whatever can make sense for you, make that picture in your head. So each domain has different dimensions. Under each dimensions, there's multiple indicators. Under each indicator, there's multiple behavior markers. Okay, we're going to look at examples for each of these, but it's hierarchical. Domain, dimension, indicator, behavioral markers. Okay, you see how it is an incredibly complex tool? Say yes, it's incredibly complex. Great tool, but incredibly complex. So this is another way to look at it. It doesn't have the indicators or the behavioral markers, but you know that underneath this, there is a bunch of behavioral markers, and under each, indicators. Under each indicator is multiple behavioral markers. Okay? So, and again, these are descriptions of each of them. So you have the 3 domains, and then the dimensions under each. And it cut off. It doesn't look like I formatted that very good. Again, this is for your reference. So the first domain, we're going to go quickly through all of these, but I want to highlight them so you understand exactly what they're measuring, and then we're going to get to our in-class activity. So the emotional support domain. How do teachers help students develop warm, supportive relationships with teachers and peers, enjoyment of and excitement about learning, feelings of comfort in the classroom, and appropriate levels of autonomy? What does the word autonomy mean? What's a synonym for autonomy? Meaning a word that you might be familiar with that means the same thing. Independence, right? Autonomy is, think of this. When we go on autopilot, it's something that is done by itself, right? So think of autonomy as the same way. They are separate entities. Do children start developing autonomy around the time that they're pronounced autonomy by the time they're around 2? What do they start to say? No, me do it, mine. Those are all indicators of autonomy, and that's why we like those things. Me do it is a huge thing. Me do it, I do it, depending on where they are in their grammar development. That's development of autonomy, okay? So one of the things that emotional support domain measures is how teachers appropriately support that, okay? All right. So positive climate, so go here. So emotional support is the domain. What are the 3 dimensions under that domain? So what's the domain that we're looking at? what are the 3 dimensions that we're looking at? I'm sorry, 4. Is that what's sorry, 4. I can count. So what are the 4 dimensions? Why don't you guys say there's 4, not 3? You just sit there silently? Sillies. All right. So what are we looking at? What's positive climate? Is it a domain or a dimension? What is an indicator? See if you...
Like relationship, positive, like that.
Perfect. So positive climate is a dimension. Indicator is relationship, positive affect, positive communication, and respect. So think of it this way. These are the things that indicate to the scorer that there is a positive climate. Okay? And then what are the things that we look for under each indicator? Remember what those are called? Behavioral markers. Okay? So then under each of these are behavioral markers. So what's a behavioral marker for positive affect? Smiling, laughter, and enthusiasm. We know affect, or now you do, affect is our face. If you have a positive affect, it's what your face looks like. If I say someone had a very negative affect, it means they were frowning or flinching or whatever it might be. It's what affect is what their face looks like. So positive affect is smiling, laughing. You can tell when someone's positive by their face. They don't have to say anything. So it's nonverbal cues. What's a behavioral marker underneath respect?
Eye contact, respectful language.
Perfect. So what under respect do you need to be aware of the cultural limitations of that? Of eye contact. And class is fully aware of this. This is why there's multiple behavioral markers. And when we talk about scoring in just a second, you'll need to understand that this is something that needs to be taken through the filter of what is culturally appropriate for that room. All right, so what is the domain? Emotional. It's not even up there. Look how smart you are. You remembered. All right, so it's emotional support. So positive climate is the dimension. Indicators, again, right there. Not going to go over that because you've done it. All right. What's the dimension?
Negative effect.
Perfect. What's the behavioral markers?
Yelling, physical control.
Punitive control, sarcasm, and severe negativity. Okay? So remember, this is the one where we want to have a lower score. And if you look over here, this is what the rater is going to be rating. Okay? So if there's high negative affect, the classroom is characterized by consistent irritability, anger, or other negative affect by teacher and or peers. So in every other domain, in every other dimension, we want to be on the high range. On the negative climate, we want to be on the low range, right? We want to have low negative climate. Why do you think they measure negative climate? Why wouldn't it just be good enough to measure positive climate?
Because our data we are now built it.
Yeah, and we need to know that these affect the children. And also, if we get kind of mid-range on the positive climate, if we are very high on negative climate, just because we're not too bad on positive, will a negative climate adversely affect the child? Yes. So this is something that needs to be measured. So what are the indicators? Oops. What are the behavioral markers? How's that? What are the behavioral markers? Perfect. These are the behaviors that are underneath the indicators. Starting to get the pattern? Good. What is the domain? Emotional support. Good. Okay. So negative climate, one of the things that we're tempted to do in negative climate, if you become a scorer, is that we judge based on how much we like the teacher. Okay? So this is where, and this is why, we have this extensive training so that you have to mark it in a certain way. But negative climate is something we will be most tempted, if you become a scorer, to be subjective about. Okay? That's why we have all of those behavioral indicators. Because we might just not like how the teacher interacts with the child, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative climate. So that's something that we do need to be cognizant and to think about. All right. What's the dimension? Teacher sensitivity. What are the indicators under teacher sensitivity? Perfect. What is the next? What is, let's see, problem resolution. What is that called? What is this? Is it a dimension?
Oh, that's behavior.
Behavioral marker, right? Is this starting to become more clear? Wait till we talk about scoring. Okay? So then remember, each of these are rated. So you have your domain, your dimension, and then each indicator is rated based on the behavioral markers that are seen. Okay? Is the picture becoming a little fuzzy at least? It'll become a little bit clearer. So what's the domain? Emotional support. Good. Okay. Dimension. Regard for student perspectives is a dimension. Whoops. Oh, I guess I don't have animations. Oh, that's right. I stopped animating so that you guys, because I knew you got it, right? Say yes. We don't need more pointers. So captures the degree to which teachers' interactions and students' classroom activities place an emphasis on student interest, motivation, and points of view. Really look at how detailed this tool is. This is just measuring the interaction, so it's covering every facet. I mean, this is an entire measurement of how well the teacher respects what the students have to say, their likes, their wants, their perspectives. That's huge. There's no other tool that does that. Okay? And so one of the things that the classes come under fire about is because, first of all, it's so expensive, and second of all, it's so difficult to be trained in it. But I really want you to think critically about the fact that there are so many different measurements. Do you see now how you can't just pick up this booklet and go and say, I can measure someone on this? It's huge. Okay? What's an indicator under this dimension? Flexibility, supportive autonomy, student expression, restriction of movement. Okay? So if we're looking at a pre-K classroom and children are belted in, you know, as they sit at the table, is that a restriction of movement? And I've seen it in pre-K classrooms, because 2.5-year-olds and 3-year-olds, do they still get out of their seat a lot? Yes. What is a behavioral marker underneath student expression? Elicits ideas and perspectives. Good. All right. So what is the next domain? So we've talked about emotional support, right? That's one domain. What's this domain? Classroom organization. And how many dimensions are underneath that domain? 3. Good. See how smart you are. Okay, what is a dimension? Say behavioral management. Oh yeah, that's right. Don't let me keep doing that. I forget I am not animating for you guys. Where is a behavioral marker? Give me one behavioral marker. I'm switching it up. What's a behavioral marker? Rarely reactive is one. What's another one? Any of these, right? You could just mumble them. Blah, blah, blah. There, good. You did a behavioral marker. So remember, these are behavioral marker. What's an indicator?
Student behavior.
Right here, right? These are indicators. Good. Behavior management, dimension, productivity. What's the dimension? I can say it, but you guys don't always repeat it that correctly. So you giggle, but yet I know you. All right. So what is productivity? How do you measure productivity? Considers how well the teacher manages instructional time and routines and provides activities for students so that they have the opportunity to be involved in productivity. It's not how well the teacher engages the students. Remember, that is something else that is being measured. It's how the teacher helps the students stay on task. That's a huge thing to measure. This is classroom management. Okay? If a teacher yells across the room and says, "Get back to your drawing," is that increasing productivity? No, we might think it does because it might immediately make them turn, but it doesn't make them listen to us. So learning isn't measured. Again, it's not a cognitive thing. We're not saying how well they learn their ABCs or 1, 2, 3s. It's how well the teacher supports the children staying on task. Isn't that a really neat thing to try and measure? It's difficult. Can you imagine trying to measure that? Again, this is why there's such extensive training. As a teacher, would this be very valuable feedback? If you've noticed during work time for the 2 hours, it just seems like everything dissolves into chaos, would it be great to be evaluated and say, well, this is why you're failing. You're not supporting the children to be productive. And again, a great teacher says, oh, good, now I know exactly what I need to do. And says, I do fine. It's just these kids have behavioral problems. If their parents would just step up, it wouldn't be an issue. That's simply not true. It's the teacher's responsibility. It's very difficult sometimes to get the results of these evaluations because they're very specific. So we will catch every single little thing. And again, just like the Eckers, just because one score is low doesn't mean you're a horrible teacher. No. It means there are things you can improve on. Can every single teacher improve? Yes. I'm phenomenal, and I can improve. Say, no, you can't, because I haven't graded you yet. Of course. But yes, every teacher can improve. All right, what's the dimension? Instructional learning format. Give me an behavioral marker. Good. Give me an indicator.
Student interest.
Good. You guys are so smart. All right. So instructional learning format, this is engagement. How well does the teacher engage the children? Does the teacher have learning objectives? What is the purpose for these activities that they're giving? It's not about the quality of instruction, and this is what will be hard, or the developmentally appropriateness of it. We don't have to agree what is being taught. And this will be one of the most difficult things if you become an evaluator. They can be doing dittos, which we hate dittos, right? You know what dittos are? You guys sometimes don't know what dittos are. The color-in sheets, if you've taken CD3, you know we don't do dittos, right? Say no to dittos. This isn't measuring how good the curriculum is. It's how well the teacher supports the curriculum. Okay? And so this is kind of encouraging because will you have to work in a program where it's pretty cruddy curriculum? Yes. And it's not about the curriculum. The curriculum is not what damages the children. It doesn't maybe support them as it should and increase their abilities as it should, but it's the teacher that makes the difference. You can still be a great teacher with really bad curriculum. And quite frankly, that is what you'll probably enter into. If you work for any type of other agency, probably, you're going to have a prepackaged curriculum that's not going to follow the children's interests. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't keep you from being a good teacher. Okay? And I know we talk extensively in this program about the importance of project approach. It is a great approach. You won't get the opportunity to teach project approach probably initially in your career until you become, later. And I can pretty much guarantee that. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a bad teacher. You just throw up your hands and say, well, I was handed this curriculum, there's nothing I can do. Say no. You can still be a good teacher with curriculum that you might not agree with. Okay? It's the level of interactions that matters. And I reinforce that because this is what you will have. And so many teachers will say, well, I can only work with what I have, and this is bad curriculum, so, oh well. It's the teacher that makes the difference. Is that distinction clear to you guys? Okay. All right. So we're on to a new domain. What is the third domain? How many dimensions are under this domain? Three. Concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. Again, this is not talking about how well they learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s and colors. Okay? So even instructional support is not about how much they learn. They are not measuring that. They are measuring you as the teacher. This is exclusively what this tool is about. It's one of the reasons I really like it. All right, so what is the dimension? What is planning? Behavioral marker, right? What is analysis and reasoning?
Indicator.
What is connect concepts?
Indicator. Oh, wait. That's a
Connect
behavior mark.
concepts.
Oh, behavioral mark.
Behavioral marker, right? What is connections to the real world?
That's an indicator.
So what? Indicator. Good. Okay. You're getting it. All right. What is quality of feedback? It's not a domain? Be sure of yourself. There you go. Be confident. It's a dimension, right? Quality of feedback is a dimension. What is scaffolding? Indicator. See how great this tool is? It has a word like scaffolding. Is scaffolding good?
Yes.
Yes, we like scaffolding, and you get measured on it. If you're good at scaffolding, then you hire. Teacher often scaffolds for students who are having a hard time understanding a concept, answering a question, or completing an activity. If you're bad, teacher rarely provides scaffolding to students, but rather dismisses responses or actions as incorrect or ignores problems and understandings. So this is very clearly articulates each point in it. Okay, it's not subjective. We don't have to say, yeah, they're pretty good at scaffolding. Does it tell you exactly what to look for? Yes. So on the feedback, quality of feedback is the dimension. So even how the teacher responds to the children. Again, this is different than language scaffolding, which we're going to look at, or language support. What is, oh shoot, language something. Quality of feedback is the response to their questions, comments, or actions. It's not how language rich the environment is, or language rich you are as a teacher. It's how you respond. So think about how minute that is, and that it's going to be measured. So a quality feedback loop, and you're even given examples as an evaluator, what are quality feedback loops? It's, question? No? Okay.
Oh, no, I think because I was looking ahead and...
A language modeling, yes, so that's the next one. So this is different than language modeling. Feedback loop example. Lucas, why do we have to stay inside? Teacher, what do you think, Lucas? Lucas, I don't know. Teacher, look out the window and tell me what you see. Rain. What would happen if we went outside? We'd get wet. And how would that make us feel? Yucky. That's right, we would feel yucky because our clothes would get wet from the rain. This is why we're staying inside right now. Is that high quality or low quality? High quality. What would be a low quality feedback loop? Lucas says, why do we have to stay inside? What's a low quality response?
She answered the question. If she just went straight answer the question.
If she didn't answer the question, what else? Because I said so? Because it's not our time outside? Why does this make a quality feedback? She extends, she explains, she scaffolds, she does all of those things that we know are great communication. Okay? So even how the teacher responds to questions and comments is rated. Again, as a teacher, if you do all of these great things, wouldn't it be nice to know this is where I struggle? Again, very detailed. What is this? A dimension or a domain? A dimension. Is open-ended question a domain or a behavioral marker? See, guys are smiling. It's a what?
Indicator.
Indicator. Right. What is repeats? Behavioral marker. What is variety of words? Good. All right. So we're just going to go quickly through scoring, only because if you become an evaluator, you'll go through this extensively. But it's good to know how these are scored, especially from an observation and assessment standpoint, because we've gone over all of these things. Okay? So this is on page 16 of the big book. Okay, so not on the dimension guide, but on the classroom things. So one score for each dimension per observation cycle based on the degree to which the certain behavioral markers characterize the classroom during that cycle. Okay? So when they say cycles, again, this is an incredibly in-depth observation tool. So you have 30-minute cycles. You have to observe for at least 2 hours. Okay, so at least 4 cycles, and you choose one dimension to observe, okay, in that cycle. Good, following me still? So you have 30 minutes per cycle. 20 minutes to observe, all you're doing is observing. You are not writing anything down during those 20 minutes. 20 minutes to purely observe, and then 10 minutes to write things down. You don't start your next observation cycle until the beginning of that 30 minutes again. So if you start observing at 10 o'clock, you observe from 10 to 10:20, you write things down from 10:20 to 10:30, and you start observing again at 10:30. You observe until when?
11:40.
You observe until
50.
50. 30 plus 20 is 50. You got it. And then you write down for how long? And then you start observing again at 11. You observe until?
11:20.
And then you write down until?
11:30.
And you observe again until?
11:30.
I'm not sure why that from the 11:30, the 30 to the 50 is difficult. You observe from 11:30 to 11:50, write down until 12. And then you do it again. At least 2 hours. Focused on one dimension each time. Give me an example of a dimension. Look at your book. Give me an example of a dimension. Dimension.
Positive climate.
Positive climate, right? Emotional support is a
Domain.
okay? So this isn't the domains. 30 minutes for one dimension. So in other words, 30 minutes to rate this. 20 minutes to observe just this. 10 minutes to write just this. Minimum of 4 cycles obtained. Okay? So again, you have to do it for a minimum of 2 hours. In other words, 4 cycles. Okay, let's see. Class code should reflect the experience of the typical or average student in the class. And this is where it can become difficult, because you're focusing in on one teacher, and that one teacher might, and this will be measured on there, either favor one student or interact differently with one student. One student might have an excess of behavioral problems. So what you have to do is focus on what is the average experience for all the children in that room. Code based on behavior of all adults in the room during the cycle. And usually you only have 1 or 2 teachers. Okay? No coding during recess or outdoor time, because interaction patterns change during that time. Children change during that time. We want to be consistent. Common pitfalls to inflate the score, because observer takes the perspective of the teacher. Especially if you're a teacher in the classroom, you know how hard it is to manage 20 preschoolers. It might be a bad day. Maybe it's been raining for 2 weeks straight. And so it is tempting to say, I know how hard this is. She's doing the best she can. We'll just kind of make it a little bit higher because she's really trying hard. Okay? So that'll be a temptation if you're in the classroom. But you can also have the opposite. If you have a difficult time taking the perspective of the teacher, then it can be, I don't understand why she's being so moody. She's just kind of a mean person. She needs to be marked low on all of this. We want to be very careful we're not subjective when we do. Don't let a single instance carry too much weight. So the teacher might have said one phrase that was bad, or that, I probably wouldn't have worded it that way. It doesn't represent all of the interactions, then it shouldn't carry that much weight. So if she accidentally speaks off the cuff and says something that's a little bit more harsh than it should have been, but the 99 other interactions are positive, then take that as it should be, 1 out of 99, or whatever it might be. Okay? It still needs to be taken into account, but don't give it more weight than it should get. Okay? Also, don't let your score from one cycle, and this will be the most difficult thing to do. Every cycle is an independent cycle. Okay, so every 20-minute observation is completely separate than that other 20-minute observation. So you basically have to forget what happened in the last 20 minutes and look at it with new eyes. Because remember, every 20-minute cycle, you're looking at a different dimension. So whatever happened in the old dimension, it doesn't matter. This is a new dimension. Do you think that's hard to do? That's incredibly difficult to do. It's hard to forget what you just saw and look at the situation with new eyes. Okay, but that's what we're supposed to do. So this is how scoring works. So again, each of the dimensions, each of the indicators are scored 1 to 7. And these are, the low range is 1 or 2, the middle range is 3 to 5, the high ranges are 6 to 7s. Dimension scores for each cycles are averaged. Okay, so if you do that dimension more than once, you average the score. So for one 20-minute cycle, they got a 5, one 20-minute cycle, they got a 4, one 20-minute cycle, they got a 6. Average, add them together, divide them by 3. And that's the score they have on that dimension. Okay? Negative score is reversed. Remember, we want low on negatives, high on all the other ones. So we only got 1s and 2s on negatives, highs on the other one. All right. So the national averages, when we take all of the classrooms that have been evaluated on class, positive climate is about a 5. Negative climate is a 1 or 2. That's good. That's what we want. Teacher sensitivity is a 4 to a 5. Behavior management, 4 to 5. Productivity, 4. Instructional learning, 3 to 4. Concept development, 1 to 2. Quality of feedback, 1 to 2. Language modeling, 2 to 3. Go back to that. Were there any 6 to 7s? No. What are the average ranges? 4 to 5 and 3 to 4. So mid-range. Was there some that were in the 1 to 2s? Yes. So does this pretty much characterize what we know about early childhood education? Most are mediocre. There are some that are really bad. But most are mediocre. What are most? Are they good or bad on quality of feedback? Bad. The national average is we are bad 1 to 2. That's the lowest you could be. And on concept development. That's our national average. And even at our highest, which is 4 to 5, is that still in the high range? No. It's still pretty bad. Again, this is the average, so we have the really, really bad centers that bring down the really, really good centers. But do we have more really good centers or more really bad centers? More really bad centers. Okay? So this truly does reflect the state of our country. And that's one of the reasons that we can see this is a pretty valid tool, because this really isn't a surprise to us. To me, it's a little bit surprising that we have some 4 to 5s. Because I've seen the state of most of our centers. But there are some really great teachers out there. Few and far between, but there are some.
What about the highest national average?
As far as a state or a county, probably, I don't know if Italy currently uses class. Australia is doing actually pretty good. Italy would be the best if they utilize the class tool by far. Finland would probably be a close second. Australia, a third. We're down pretty low. We're bad.
What about states? Like what states?
Like not California. New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Vermont would probably be near the top. For a while, Massachusetts had a state law that all centers had to be NAEYC accredited. Unfortunately, it's no longer the case, but I think New Jersey now is somewhere along there. That's a state, right? New Jersey? Yes. I always get them confused. Geography, not my height. Yeah, unfortunately, more on the East Coast, not a whole lot out here. Even though we're a large state, we're pretty cruddy.
So everyone do the adjustment for the evaluated scores?
All of the centers?
Yes. Like once a year, if it's every 2 years?
It depends on what the rating system is. So QRIS, anybody familiar with that? That's our quality rating improvement system, okay? So this is where in the next couple of years, we're in the beta test right now, meaning centers are voluntarily doing that. We were one of them. We got 5 stars, which is pretty dang good. I mean, it's the best. So they're going to give early childhood centers a star rating, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that way parents have a better idea of what are good centers, because do parents... No, they don't know. It's nothing on them. They don't know what makes a good center or a bad center. They just walk in, and if there's numbers on the wall, letters on the wall, and really a lot of cutesy borders, then typically parents say, this is good, right? So now we have a star rating. Class is going to be one of the tools that is going to be utilized as an assessment on the centers, okay? So is ECHRS, so is DRDP, so is the education of the teachers in the center, including special needs units. To get a 5-star, every teacher has to have 6 special needs, early intervention units. Okay? That's a huge, huge thing. It's never before had that been linked to quality, which it should. Okay? That's going to be starting to be implemented in Fresno County in the next couple of years. The Bay Area already has it. A lot of other states in the nation already have a QRIS system. CLASS has been used in many other states for years. I was at a meeting last year, and the entire state of Ohio, Iowa, one of those Midwest states, have been using CLASS for about 4 years already. So it's just trickling over here. It started in the University of Virginia. That's where it was founded. I couldn't remember the other day. So it started in the University of Virginia, so it's kind of trickled down, as do most assessment tools. It really became popular in California when Head Start adopted it nationally on the federal level. So if you go work for a Head Start, you will be evaluated on the CLASS tool. Unfortunately, what was happening, I don't know if they changed it, is it was then linked to funding. So how they did. It still is? Okay. I was hoping that would change, because even the people at CLASS went, oh, because that's not the intention of the tool. It's not. But right now it's linked to funding, and Head Starts are actually losing their funding, if I'm remembering correctly, if they're not doing well. Again, we should all do well on this, but we make it a high stakes testing. What happens when we make things high stakes? What do we start to do as humans, as people? What do we start to do when tests become high stakes? Stress, and we do some stupid things like teaching to the test and cheating, right? Inflating scores, changing scores, bribing, things like that. And that's not the intention of the tool. The intention of the tool is for self-improvement. But when it starts to be linked to money, we have a lot of crazy things that start to happen. Because we know that if a Head Start center loses the funding, what happens to the kiddos in that center? They don't get the help they need. So that's one of the things that we're going, that's not good at all. We never want a test linked to funding. And then it becomes what's called high stakes. Okay? And we know what happens when things are linked to money. Crazy, crazy, crazy things.
Now, like, say, because we are in the county or whatever, are the assessments or whatever, are they available to us as the public? So can we see these? Like, if we ask, like, well, can I see
The results of the test?
Yeah, like, are we able to find out that information? Because if our child goes there and it's a low ranking program.
I don't know. That's a good question to ask. I know that the public school system does have to reveal their test scores. I would think so, but I actually have never asked that question. So that is something that is very good to know if parents can see the background of the STAR system. I would imagine yes. Where they get access to that, I don't know if it'll be put on a website. My guess, again, would be yes, that it would have to be public knowledge. And I think it should be. Yeah. And what are the scores? Yeah. Ask. Yeah. As a parent, you are entitled to know, and the more educated you parents are, the more our centers will improve. The reason our centers get away with being pretty bad is because parents don't demand that they're better, simply because they just don't know. Think about if you have older children, what did you know when your children were young? It's much different. Or ask the people around you, what are the things they look for in a center? It's basically that there's borders with 1, 2, 3s and ABCs, and all the colors are pasted on there.
A lot of people that I know too are do it for convenience, be like,
Mhm.
well, it's on my way to work.
Right. Not understanding the implications of poor quality. But the flip side is they don't have access. So even if they knew, I just had a discussion with somebody about this. I say, that's a bad center, that's a bad center, that's a bad center, and they said to me, where is a good center? Sorry, there is none. And that's a very, very sad thing to have to say. There is none that the public can typically get into. There's better. There's not a whole lot of bests out there. So it's very discouraging. But the hope is that this rating scale, if a bunch of centers have to put 3s on their doors and parents see, well, I want my kid to go to that 5-star. Why aren't you a 5-star? We're hoping that public outrage then will mandate that things change. It's going to be on a governmental level, but it'll start as a grassroots movement, meaning it'll start with the people forcing the government to say, all right, we're going to help out with this.